It was a tremendously hot fire. The building ultimately was destroyed.
I looked at it and I said, boy, this is not going backward the way it was.
It was freezing everywhere. Lines was freezing. I mean, it was a big deal.
We were very conscious of water damage.
Fire, a lot of manpower, a lot of energy put into the fighting fire.
As we come to the end of the 150th anniversary celebration, we wanted to highlight some of the big fires in Jeffersonville. These include the Howard Steamboat Museum, Street United Methodist Church, the Quadrangle, and the Horner Novelty.
On the night of March the 17th, 1971, the heating boiler in the basement of this building exploded due to lack of water. It lit the floor timbers on fire under the kitchen. This started a fire that then went under the grand staircase and grew from that point. The grand staircase became a chimney of sorts because it goes through all 3 floors of the house. And where I'm standing is about where it came through and went right through the roof above. Firefighters came in from many locations and used the grand staircase as the point to fight the fire. They were very lucky that they figured that out quick enough because they saved the building. They saved the majority of the artifacts because of that. But the damage is still here, hidden well today, like what you see behind me and the charring of these beams. 1971 through 1972, the building was stabilized by putting a roof on it. All the walls are 3 rows thick of bricks, so the building itself was actually stable. As a matter of fact, it would have cost more to knock it down and replace it than it did to restore it. But all in all, the building is not only structurally sound, but probably one of the most sturdy buildings to have gone through not only a fire, but the 1937 flood.
So we're here today at the Howard Steamboat Museum in Jeffersonville. I'm talking with retired firefighter Les Cavanaugh. Les, you were here for that fire. What can you tell me about that?
Well, what I remember about this fire, the weather was warmer, decent, reference of the month of March. The call came in the evening time frame, so all of headquarters company rolled up. That was the station at 8th and Wall Street, and as well as the station at Fire Station 2, Engine Company 2. When we arrived, clearly there was an open flame working fire that was extending out of the parking lot side, if you will, of the building. And that fire had really gotten going because this building is a historic, fabulous, well-built building. Had nothing but hardwood in it and ornate objects and fixtures within the content of the building. We were all aware of the value, historic value, and the importance of this building to our community. We had twofold concern. Number one, water damage and extinguishing the fire. You know, how are you going to extinguish this fire if you don't put water in this building? We battled this blaze for a considerable time. It was an overnight venture for the fire department. We did not leave the scene. There was an exchange of personnel as best we could do it back then because Jeffersonville Fire Department probably was staffed out with about 52 personnel all total. Mutual aid was required or requested. An aerial platform from Louisville was sent over to assist us. New Albany Fire Department came in to assist us. Clarksville Fire Department came in as well to assist us. Today they call that mutual aid. Back then we just called for help. That had to have been the first service or operational call for our Jeffersonville Fire Department's first aerial platform, which was Snorkel 47. And we had trained ad nauseum. We would train at First Presbyterian Church's parking lot on the steeple there, the old clock face there. Every person had to have their hands on it in terms of our staff and fire department personnel. We had to train on it. And it extended out over the rooftop. We were very conscious of water damage, but we had to get the fire out. knowing the historic value of this structure. And it was going to be a seriously difficult fire to fight because of the way it was constructed. We were putting probably, at least with the one apparatus. Now, bear in mind, there's engines pumping water. There's the quads and the squints pumping water. So there was probably about, then there were handheld lines and individuals were in here throwing water as well while this building's on fire. I'm only talking about external water trying to, knock this fire down. Superheated fire. Count the amount of apparatus discharging water, the amount of hand lines with personnel in the building with 1.5 booster, 1.5 inch fire hose. Hazard a guess of 10 to 15,000 gallons per minute of water into this fire. I alone, with my apparatus pumping, had a 550 gallon per minute deck or deluge gun.
I read that when all was said and done, there was 8 feet of water in the basement that had to be pumped out. Now you say what you're saying, I can see why.
Yeah, quite a bit of water coming in. And then there's the weight of that water. So it's still standing, so we were successful.
And we thank you that it's still standing. So we're here today at Wall Street United Methodist Church to discuss the fire that happened on February 9th, 1979. Mr. Brent Morris is here to talk to us about what happened that day. What do you remember about that?
I was awakened by the telephone about 4:30 in the morning. Pastor Jerry Hyde said that the church is on fire. Well, my son and I came down later, probably about 9 o'clock, and the firemen by that time had pretty well gotten the blaze under control. But it was cold. It was 20 below zero. And the poor firemen, my gosh, they were running around with ice all over their helmets and their jackets.
It was extremely cold. It was below zero. Everybody thought it was just unreal that we were out here, like we're dying. I mean, the water's freezing on us. And when you're wet, you're done. You're just wet. I mean, I think it was 10 or 12, maybe below, with the wind chill. I know we left hose in the street for, a couple of days. I mean, it just from the leaking connections, and it just froze.
Eventually, they got the fire all put out. And they pretty much determined that it was arson. After they got the fire all put out, we didn't have a place to meet anymore. The Knights of Columbus were kind enough to give us space in their auditorium for services. And we had a piano that we were able to get over there. So we had services there. I don't think we missed a Sunday.
So when you got that call that morning, that early morning hour, what did you, did you think the fire was a big fire? What did you think?
Well,
what did you think you would see when you came over here later that morning?
I really wasn't sure. Pastor Jerry said that it was pretty bad, but I really didn't know what to expect when I got here, and I was appalled. I looked at it and I said, "Boy, this is not going back the way it was."
It was a tremendously hot fire. The building ultimately was destroyed, and it's the newer Wall Street Church there.
What was left when you got here?
The outsides were still there, but a lot of the inside and the roof were gone. They saved a lot of the brick, and these are brick from the original building that we salvaged, and we decided that we really wanted to put the brick back to have something of the old building.
Of course.
Well, time went on, the building got built, and eventually we had a procession from the Knights of Columbus down through the alley and around and into the building here. And our organist was playing our new pipe organ as we came in. So we had open house a couple of times, and people came in to see the building.
So you could say you guys have come back from fire and ice and ash and, you were able to rebuild after that,
Yeah.
that fire. And no one was hurt in the fire?
No, I don't think so.
Thankfully, there were no loss of life or injury to personnel.
Probably some of the firemen got
A little cold, a lot
Yeah.
cold.
frostbite and such.
Yeah, I'm rubbing this hand here. Now I'm thinking about the frostbite that I had and how it, I think about it to this day.
A month later, in March of 1979, Fire Chief Edwin Boyle said he was 98% sure the fire was arson. With so much debris inside the church, it was hard to determine if an accelerant was used. We're at the Quadrangle, where in January of 1992 a fire broke out. By the time the fire was extinguished, most of the buildings facing 10th Street had been destroyed. I'm going to speak with retired firefighter Les Kavanaugh about what he remembers that day, as well as retired fire chief Clark Miles.
Yeah, that was magical date because that was the year that I actually retired.
I'm here today with retired Jeffersonville Fire Chief Clark Miles. Clark, you were on the Quadrangle fire back in January of 1992. What do you remember about that?
Well, what I remember about that was that I was, in fact, was going to get ready to leave and taking off that night at around 6:37. On my radio, I heard they had a 911 hang-up call from Dyson's barbershop.
One of the firefighters had his barber shop in there, and I think he lost that too as well.
Well, Dyson was on the fire department, so I said, dang, I don't know what happened there. Then about that time, I heard people knocking on the bay doors. I was at headquarters at 8th and Wall, and then the alarm was going off. I said, dang, what's going on? And they announced about, a working fire at Quadrangle. I was the second engine going out, so I was supposed to lay lines coming in. Well, heck, as soon as we got heading out of Wall Street and going down 10th Street, you look to the right, all you seen was heavy smoke.
It was very hot, it was very intense, and it was very cold.
Yes, it was another cold 18 degrees.
It was freezing everywhere. Lines was freezing. I mean, it was a big deal. And we called a whole lot of extra companies in.
That was a tremendous fire. I mean, it had a lot of fire load in it. And
It started at the carpet store, right?
yes, in the carpet store. The business is fortunately still in business today, just at a different location.
We was at the fire for quite a bit of time, trying to fight it, trying to surround it, trying to stop it in its tracks where it was at. And it was a big job. We fortunately, I don't recall anybody getting hurt in that situation. It was started over the awning somewhere around Simpsons, around that part in the rear. It was major damage, major fire, weather conditions bad. Again, you have something like that, you just don't want to lose the property we lost then. But fortunately enough, right now, we've had a chance to redevelop
Yeah,
it.
because that's historic property.
Yes,
that was the
historic
Army
property.
Depot.
You better believe it. So right now, we've able to, in a historic situation, we still was able to come back and redo where we got City Hall at now, and fix up some of those areas where it was damaged at in the fire. So yes, that fire was a bigger fire in the city of Jeff, and we've had quite a few of them, but there was one that I know firsthand, coming out there and seeing that, and the weather conditions and the fire where it was raging as we was fixing to go down that way, and how cold it was, how everything was freezing up, and so it was a major incident here in the city.
Behind me is the former Horner Novelty building, where in January of 2004 a massive fire broke out. By the time the fire was extinguished, most of the block had been destroyed. Retired firefighter Joe Lee not only was fighting the fire, but he was also part owner in one of the businesses that was destroyed. We'll also speak with retired Fire Chief Clark Miles. I'm here today with retired Jeffersonville firefighter Joe Lee. Joe, what do you remember about that day?
January, it was cold. I was working downtown at 8th and Wall. The fire came in about 5:35, I think, in the evening. I knew when they said that they had smoke in the area of Old Town Grocery, and then the second call come in, said they had a working fire at Horner Novelty, and I owned the building next door at 300 Spring, and I knew that it was going to be a tough fire to fight because of all the paper products that they had, so it meant it had a lot of fuel.
The store sold party supplies mostly made of paper or plastic. The second-story windows were covered in plywood, making ventilation impossible, and the wind was blowing between 20 and 30 miles an hour.
Well, what I remember about that night was that I was at my mother-in-law's. We was going Sunday have dinner, and they knew Albany, and then we got the call. So I headed down that way, and as I was getting close, I seen smoke in the sky. I didn't know at the time how bad it was. Then as I got to 10th and Spring coming in from Albany, I looked down to the right, and I said, "Gee, many whiz, the whole downtown going to burn down." And we got there, and it was heavy fire, heavy smoke conditions. I had set up command post. I ended up trying to get as many companies as I can get there. I ended up hitting around 8 alarms on that fire.
Which means they dispatch 8 other companies to it from different surrounding units and stuff like that. So Jeff was there, Clarksville was there, New Albany was there, Utica was there, Louisville was there, and they very seldom come across the bridge.
And I also called Louisville Fire Department to utilize their ladder truck. We're trying to stop it in its path where it was at. Problem was it was so cold at night, and embers was flying everywhere and going on top of buildings.
A lot of manpower, a lot of energy put into the fighting fire. Yeah.
What made this fire so tough to fight and made it get so strong?
The problem we have on something like that is when a fire gets a head start like that, and they get up in them common attics just raging, and we couldn't really get in like we wanted to.
It had such a head start. Through the investigation, we found out that Horner had an employee there and came in on a Sunday afternoon, was doing some window dressing and the floor mannequins and stuff out front. And she came in around noon, she turned the lights on. Shortly thereafter, she started smelling some smoke or smelling some odor. She looked around, didn't see anything, so then she just went ahead about doing her business. And then she left. She didn't call the manager, didn't notify the fire department to come check it out. And she left about 3 o'clock. And so then at 5:30, 5:35, I believe we got a call that they had a working fire there, so I knew it had a head start. So I knew we was in a lot of trouble.
Because we didn't know conditions as far as stability of the buildings, as far as having people in there. So what we had to do was just fight it more and try to cut it from the outside.
How much destruction was there?
Oh, our building was completely gutted. And what happened was we had sprinklers in our building, Horner did not.
They didn't have sprinklers up where that was, and and everything. Once it got going, it got rolling. And again, some people smelled some stuff earlier, but they didn't know where it was at or what was going on. And
Damage was estimated at $7 million. There was no injuries to civilians or firefighters.
again, tough situation, but we conquered it. Everybody lost a whole lot, but insurance took care of a whole lot of stuff.
No lives were lost.
Yeah, that's right, and that's what's important to me.